Hina did not plan to go into the deep woods that morning. She only meant to check the trail camera near the creek, swap the memory card, and return before noon. It was a simple routine she followed every week because the forest behind her small town was full of quiet problems that people ignored until it was too late. Broken fences, illegal dumping, injured animals, strange tire tracks that appeared after rain and vanished before anyone could ask questions. Hina liked questions. That was why she worked as a wildlife field officer for the local reserve. It was not a big job, but it mattered. The forest was the kind of place that held everything together while everyone pretended it was just scenery. That morning, the air felt wrong from the start. Birds were louder than usual, then suddenly silent. The sky stayed bright, but the light seemed flat, like it did not want to touch the ground. Even the wind moved in short bursts, like someone breathing through tight teeth. Hina parked her bike near the trailhead and tightened her laces. Her phone had 1 bar of signal. That was normal. She told herself she would be careful, do her task, and come back. But the forest did not always let people follow plans. She walked for 20 minutes, stepping over roots and puddles, keeping her eyes on the faint path. She reached the creek, found the camera strapped to a tree, and swapped the card. As she adjusted the strap, she noticed something on the far bank. A line in the mud. Not an animal track. Too straight. Too heavy. Tires. Hina froze, then moved closer. The tracks were fresh enough that the mud still held sharp edges. Whoever made them had driven off the official trail, across a patch of protected ground. That was not just rude. It was illegal. Hina followed the tracks with her eyes. They led into thicker trees where the undergrowth was dense. A normal vehicle would not bother going in there unless the driver had a reason. Her first thought was dumping. People did it all the time. Old mattresses. Broken furniture. Bags of trash. Once, someone dumped a sink with the pipes still attached. Hina hated it, but she had learned to handle it. She took a photo of the tracks for evidence. Then she made the choice that would split her life into before and after. She stepped off the path and followed the tire marks. At first, it was easy. The tracks pressed through wet leaves and soft soil. But the deeper she went, the thicker the forest became. Branches tugged at her jacket. Thorny vines tried to hook her sleeves. The air grew cooler, the shade heavier. She heard a faint sound ahead. Metal, maybe, or wood shifting. She paused, listening. Nothing. Only her own breathing. Hina kept moving, slower now. She didn't want to surprise anyone or anything. Illegal dumpers could be careless, but they could also be unpredictable when caught. The tracks curved around a stand of tall trees, then dipped into a shallow hollow. That was when she saw it. At first, her brain refused to label it. It looked like a large, dark shape, half hidden under vines and low branches. The metal surface was dull, speckled with rust, like the forest had been chewing on it for years. Then Hina took another step and recognized the long body, the raised rear, the shape that was hard to mistake once you knew it. A hearse. A real hearse, old and battered, sitting deep in the woods where it had no business being. The front windshield was cracked like spiderwebs. The tires were half sunk into the soil. The side windows were tinted, but the glass was dirty enough that she could not see inside. Hina's mouth went dry. She had seen abandoned cars before, but a hearse was not something people left by accident. It carried a meaning that clung to the air. She forced herself to stay logical. Maybe it was stolen. Maybe it was dumped. Maybe it was a prop from some film project that went wrong. Then she noticed the back door. It was not shut. It hung open slightly, as if someone had pulled it and walked away in a hurry. Hina stepped closer, her boots sinking into soft ground. The smell hit her next. Old metal. Wet leaves. A faint sharpness like spoiled oil. And something else. Not a rotten smell. Not that. Something stale and trapped, like a room that had been locked for too long. Hina's hand went to her phone. No signal. Her radio was clipped to her belt, but the reserve signal was weak in deep spots. She should turn back, she told herself. She should mark the location, return with backup, and let the proper team handle it. But the door being open pulled at her attention like a hook. If someone had been here recently, they might still be nearby. Hina took a breath, stepped to the rear, and placed her hand on the edge of the door. The metal was cold despite the morning sun. "Hello," she called, voice firm. "Reserve officer. Is anyone here?" No answer. The forest held its breath again. Hina pushed the rear door open wider. The inside was dim. Dust floated in the thin light. The space where a casket would normally slide in was visible, lined with old rails. The floor was stained dark in spots, but she could not tell what from. Her eyes adjusted, and she saw the coffin. It was not a fancy one. It looked plain, wooden, old, and scratched. The surface was dusty, but the shape was clear. It sat on the rails like it had been placed there on purpose and left. Hina's heart hammered in her chest. She did not want to go closer. Every part of her wanted to step back, to leave, to pretend she had never walked into this hollow. But her job had trained her to face what others avoided. She had tracked injured animals in storms. She had entered abandoned cabins where someone had been living illegally. Fear was a signal, not a command. She climbed into the back, careful with her footing. The coffin was positioned slightly off-center. That felt wrong. If it had been transported normally, it would be aligned. This looked like it had been shoved in. Hina leaned closer and noticed something on the lid. A mark scratched into the wood. Not a symbol, not a fancy carving. Just letters, rough and uneven, like someone did it in a hurry. She wiped dust away with the back of her glove. The letters were hard to read at first. Then they came into focus. Not her. Hina stared, confused. Her throat tightened. Not her meant what? Not her body. Not her name. Her mind spun through options too fast to hold. She stepped back slightly, then noticed something else. A strip of cloth wedged between the lid and the base, like the coffin had been closed but not sealed properly. The cloth looked newer than the coffin, clean enough that it stood out against the dusty wood. Hina swallowed. If someone had put a message on the lid and left a cloth caught in the seam, it meant someone wanted the coffin opened. Or someone wanted it to look like it should never be opened. Hina looked over her shoulder toward the forest. The rear door framed a patch of trees and pale light. Nothing moved. Still, she felt watched. She turned back to the coffin and reached for the edge of the lid. Her fingers trembled. She hated that. She tightened her grip and tried again. The lid did not lift easily. It was heavier than she expected. She shifted her stance and pulled, using her body weight. The lid slid with a rough scrape. Hina stopped breathing. She lifted it just enough to create a narrow gap. A thin line of darkness opened inside. Nothing jumped out. No sudden sound. Just stillness. Hina leaned and aimed her phone flashlight into the gap. The beam cut into the coffin's interior. And what she saw made her body go cold. It was not what she expected. Not even close. There was no body. Instead, the coffin was packed with objects, arranged tightly as if someone had built a hidden storage space. Papers wrapped in plastic. A small metal box. A sealed jar. A bundle of cloth tied with string. And on top of everything, placed where a face would be, was a photo in a clear sleeve. Hina lifted the photo with shaking hands. It showed a woman standing outside a building, looking directly at the camera. The woman's eyes were calm but tired, like someone carrying a secret. Hina recognized her. Everyone in town would. The woman in the photo was the person Hina had trusted most at her job. Officer Nyla, the reserve supervisor who hired Hina 2 years ago. Hina's stomach dropped hard. Why is she in here? Hina whispered. Her mind raced back through conversations, meetings, small strange moments she had ignored. How Nyla sometimes took calls outside and returned with a tight jaw. How she avoided certain areas of the forest. How she insisted some zones were off-limits, even when the rules did not fully match. Hina looked at the scratched words again. Not her. The message was not about the person in the coffin. It was about the person in the photo. Not her. Not Nyla. Meaning what? That Nyla was not who she claimed to be? That the town's idea of her was wrong? Hina's hands moved without permission, driven by a need she could not control. She opened the coffin wider and started to sort through the contents carefully. The plastic-wrapped papers were documents, maps, forms with stamps. Some pages had red markings like urgent notes. She pulled one out and read the top line. Land transfer record. Hina blinked. Why would land records be hidden in a coffin inside a hearse in the forest? She flipped the page and saw a list of names, some crossed out, some circled. The dates were recent. Not decades old. Recent enough to matter now. She pulled another paper. Wildlife relocation permit. Then another. Restricted area authorization. Hina felt the ground tilt under her. These were not random papers. They were official documents, the kind that only a few people could access. And the signature at the bottom of one page made her heart punch against her ribs. Nyla's signature. Hina's fingers went numb. She grabbed the small metal box. It was locked with a simple latch. She forced it open. Inside were memory cards, like the kind used in trail cameras. Dozens of them. Hina stared at the pile. Trail camera footage could prove anything. Trespassing. Dumping. Illegal hunting. Even people meeting in places they claimed to never visit. Hina had swapped her own camera card earlier. Now she wondered if it was one of the many that had been hidden. Her phone buzzed suddenly. One bar of signal appeared for a moment, like the forest decided to allow it. A message came through. Unknown number. Stop looking. Walk away. You already have enough. Hina's breath caught. She stared at the screen, then looked out through the open rear door again. This time, something did move. A figure, far between the trees, standing still. Watching. Hina's body reacted before her mind did. She shoved the papers back into the coffin, not neatly, just fast. She grabbed the photo and one memory card without thinking. Then she lowered the coffin lid until it rested, not fully closed but close enough to hide what was inside. Her heart hammered so hard she felt dizzy. She stepped down from the hearse and backed away slowly, keeping her eyes on the tree line. The figure did not come closer. It just stood there, like it knew it didn't have to run. Hina turned and walked, then forced herself not to sprint. Sprinting would make her stumble, make her noisy, make her easy to track. She followed the tire tracks back toward the creek, hands sweating, mind screaming. Whoever sent that message knew she was there. Whoever hid that coffin wanted it found, or feared it being found, or both. And the biggest shock of all sat heavy in her chest like a stone. The truth she saw inside the coffin was not about death. It was about the living. About someone in town wearing a trusted face. And about a secret so serious that it had been hidden in the one place no one wanted to open. When Hina finally reached the trail camera tree, she stopped, breathing hard. Her fingers clenched the memory card in her palm so tightly it hurt. She looked down at it, then up at the forest. If she went to the police, she would have to explain why her boss's signature was on hidden papers. If she went to Nyla, she might be walking into a trap. If she did nothing, she would never sleep again. Hina made a choice, and it felt like stepping off a cliff. She pulled out her phone, typed one name, and hit call. Not the police. Not the mayor. Nor her cousin, who worked at the local internet shop and knew how to copy files fast, hide backups, and find patterns in data. The call rang once. Twice. Then Noor answered. Hina. Noor said. Why do you sound like that? Hina swallowed. I need you, she said. Right now. And you can't tell anyone. A pause. Then Noor's voice turned serious. Where are you? Hina looked back one last time toward the direction of the hearse, toward the hollow where the forest held its breath. In the woods, she said. And I think someone is watching me. Hina did not stop walking until the trail opened back into the wider path near the creek. Only then did she slow, pretending to check her phone like nothing was wrong. Her heart still pounded, but she forced her breathing to steady. Panic would make her careless, and carelessness was dangerous now. She checked behind her. No one followed. At least, no one close enough to hear her breathe. She clipped the trail camera back into place with shaking hands, slid the new memory card into her pocket, and mounted her bike. She did not ride fast. Riding fast would be noticed. She rode like a person finishing a normal task, not like someone carrying a secret heavy enough to break bones. The forest watched her leave without a sound. When she reached the edge of town, the noise of life felt unreal. Cars passed. A dog barked. Someone laughed outside a cafe. It felt wrong that the world could still move like this when her own had tilted so sharply. She went straight to Noor's shop. The place was small and narrow, packed with old computers, cables, and second-hand routers stacked like bricks. The sign outside read Bite Nook, hand-painted and fading. Noor sat behind the counter, fingers flying over a keyboard, hair tied back in a messy knot. When Noor saw Hina's face, she stood up at once. "You look like you saw a ghost," Noor said. "Lock the door," Hina said quietly. Noor did not argue. She flipped the sign, turned the key, and pulled the blinds halfway down. "What happened?" Noor asked. Hina did not answer with words. She pulled the memory card from her pocket and placed it on the counter. Then she pulled out the photo. Noor picked it up, frowned, then froze. "That's Nyla," Noor said. "I know," Hina said. Noor's eyes lifted slowly. "Why do you have this?" Hina leaned against the counter, suddenly weak. "Because I found it inside a coffin," she said. Noor stared. "Say that again." Hina told her everything. The tracks, the hearse, the coffin, the documents, the message, the figure in the trees. Noor listened without interrupting. When Hina finished, Noor exhaled slowly and rubbed her face. "Okay," Noor said. "Okay. First rule. If someone wanted you scared, it worked. That means they're watching reactions. So we don't react." Hina nodded. "What do we do?" Noor held up the memory card. "We copy this," she said. "Then we copy it again. Then we hide the copies where nobody looks." She slid the card into a reader and turned to the computer. The screen flickered, then files appeared. Dozens of short video clips. Dates. Times. Coordinates. Noor clicked one. The video showed a section of forest at night. Two people stepped into view, carrying equipment. Their faces were covered, but their movements were familiar. "That's reserve gear," Hina whispered. Noor nodded. "And that's a restricted zone," she said. "No civilians allowed." Another clip. Daytime. A truck pulling into a clearing. A tarp covering something large. Another. A meeting. For people standing close, talking low. Noor paused the video and zoomed in. "That's Nyla," she said. "And that's someone from the land office." Hina felt sick. They watched for an hour. Every clip added weight to the truth. Illegal access. Secret land transfers. Wildlife relocation permits signed for areas that were never publicly closed. They were moving animals to clear land, Hina said. Making it look like natural migration. And then selling access quietly, Noor said. Or promising it. Hina thought of the documents in the coffin. "Why hide this in a hearse?" she asked. Noor leaned back. "Because nobody looks inside coffins," she said. "And because it sends a message. Stay away. This is death." Hina's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Last warning. Hina showed Noor. Noor's jaw tightened. "Good," she said. "They're nervous." Hina frowned. That's good. Yes, Noor said. It means you found the thing they can't control. Hina looked down at her hands. They know I was there. They know someone was there, Noor corrected. Not what you took. Hina closed her eyes. It's my boss, she said. If I go public, my career is over. Noor softened. Your career doesn't matter if you're in danger, she said. And you're not wrong for seeing the truth. Hina swallowed. What if nobody believes me? Noor smiled thinly. People believe files, she said. They worked late. Noor copied everything onto 2 drives. She encrypted them and hid them inside old router casings. One stayed at the shop. One went into Hina's bag. Now, Noor said, you act normal. Normal felt impossible. The next day at work, Nyla greeted Hina like always. Calm. Polite. Efficient. You're early, Nyla said. Trail camera maintenance, Hina replied. Nyla smiled. Good. We'll need the data. Hina's stomach twisted. During the meeting, Nyla spoke about expanding monitoring zones. She pointed to a map on the wall. Hina recognized one of the areas. That zone remains restricted, Nyla said. No entry without my approval. Hina raised her hand. Why? She asked. The room went quiet. Nyla turned slowly. Because it's unstable, she said. And dangerous. Hina met her eyes. Dangerous to who? A flicker passed across Nyla's face. Then the smile returned. That's enough questions, she said. After the meeting, Nyla pulled Hina aside. You went off trail yesterday, Nyla said softly. Hina's heart skipped. I followed tracks, she said. Illegal dumping. Nyla nodded. You should be careful, she said. Curiosity gets people hurt. Hina kept her voice steady. So does silence, she said. Nyla stared at her for a moment, searching. Then she stepped back. Go home early today, Nyla said. You look tired. That night, Hina did not go home. She went back to the forest. Not to the hearse. To the clearing near the creek where the tracks had first appeared. She hid her bike and waited, tucked behind a fallen tree, heart hammering. Time passed slowly. The forest darkened. Then headlights cut through the trees. A truck rolled into the clearing. 2 figures stepped out. One carried a case. The other spoke into a phone. Hina raised her camera and took photos silently. The case opened. Inside were metal stakes and marking tape. They were preparing the land. Hina's chest tightened. The proof she needed stood right in front of her. A twig snapped near her foot. One of the figures turned. Did you hear that? The voice asked. Hina froze. The light swung closer. Check it, the other said. Hina's mind raced. Run now and be chased. Stay still and hope. The beam swept past her hiding place, missing her by inches. Then another sound came from the opposite direction. A deer burst from the brush, crashing through leaves. The figures cursed. Animals, one muttered. Always something. They returned to their work. Hina did not move until the truck left. When she finally stood, her legs trembled. This was no longer just documents. This was active, ongoing damage. Hina knew what she had to do. She would not go to the police yet. Not alone. She would go to the one place that made secrets impossible to bury. The town meeting board. The public record. And she would do it with proof so clear that denial would collapse under its own weight. The hearse was only the beginning. The coffin was not a warning. It was a message. And now, Hina understood it. The truth was never meant to stay buried. It was meant to be found by someone brave enough to open the lid. Hina slept less than 2 hours that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the coffin lid lifting again. The words carved into the wood. The photo staring back at her. Not her. Not who you think. When morning came, she did not feel tired. She felt sharp. Fear had burned itself out and left something harder behind. Decision. She met Noor before sunrise at the shop. The streets were quiet, shops still dark. Noor handed her a small drive. This one goes public, Noor said. The others stay hidden. If something happens to you, I release everything. Hina nodded. If something happens to me, promise me one thing. Noor frowned. What? Don't let them say it was an accident, Hina said. Noor's jaw tightened. I won't. Hina walked straight to the town records office. The building was old and slow, like it expected secrets. A bored clerk looked up when Hina approached the counter. I want to file a public submission, Hina said. Environmental concern. Evidence attached. The clerk sighed, then slid a form across the counter. Fill it out. Hina wrote carefully. Locations. Dates. Names. She attached copies of the videos, the photos, and a written statement. She signed her name at the bottom without shaking. When she finished, the clerk glanced at the documents. This is serious, he said quietly. Yes, Hina replied. That's why it's public. By noon, people were talking. By afternoon, they were arguing. By evening, the story was everywhere. Illegal land access. Wildlife manipulation. Secret permits. A reserve supervisor named Nyla connected to all of it. The mayor called an emergency meeting. Hina stood at the edge of the crowd as the videos played on a screen. People gasped when they saw the figures moving through restricted zones. When they recognized familiar voices. Nyla sat stiffly in the front row. When the last video ended, the room exploded. This is fake. I know that voice. They lied to us. Nyla stood. This is taken out of context, she said calmly. I was protecting the reserve. Hina stepped forward. No, she said. You were selling access to it. All eyes turned to her. Hina's voice did not waver. You hid documents in a coffin. In a hearse. Deep in the forest. Because you knew no one would look there. A ripple of shock moved through the room. Nyla's face changed. Not anger. Not panic. Resignation. You shouldn't have opened it, Nyla said softly. Hina met her gaze. You shouldn't have buried it. Security escorted Nyla out before she could say more. Investigations followed fast. External teams arrived. The reserve was shut down temporarily. Officials resigned. Charges were prepared. The forest went quiet again, but this time it felt relieved. Days later, Hina returned to the hearse. Not alone. The area was now marked and monitored. The coffin was removed properly. The contents catalogued. The hearse itself was taken away on a flatbed, its rusted body finally leaving the place it had poisoned with silence. Before it left, Hina touched the wood one last time. It was never meant to scare her, she understood now. It was meant to protect the truth until the right person came along. Weeks passed. Hina was offered a new position with an independent environmental group. She accepted. Her old job was gone, but she did not miss it. People in town stopped her on the street. Some thanked her. Some avoided her. That was fine. One evening, she walked the creek trail again. The camera blinked quietly from its tree. Birds moved freely through the canopy. The forest breathed like it had before fear carved paths through it. Hina paused and looked back once, toward where the hearse had been. She understood something then. The coffin did not change everything. Opening it did. The truth was never the danger. The danger was letting it rot in the dark. Hina turned and walked forward, into a forest that finally belonged to itself again.